What's up, friends, and welcome to another episode of Movement is Medicine. And we are right in the thick of the holiday season, and Dr. Annie and I were chatting about how important it is during this time of the year in particular to be aware of your blood sugar. It's not something you're just walking around generally thinking about unless you have a blood sugar issue.
Yeah, unless you're actually a diabetic or maybe your doc's told you, hey, you got a blood sugar issue. But a lot of us aren't thinking about it that much. And we're rolling into the holiday. I don't know about everyone else's office, but my office has got shortbread cookies, this kind of cookies, that kind of this, like all our patients. And we love it. Everyone brings Christmas treats and all the stuff, right? But so we thought we'd talk about how do we keep our blood sugar in control and maintain it during this holiday time.
And we're not going to go crazy deep in the science because it's easy to get lost in this. But from a practical standpoint, we're going to get into why blood sugar even matters. So let's start there maybe. Like, what is blood sugar? Why does it matter? Why should people be aware of it? And what are the impacts? Let's kind of get into that very top level blood sugar conversation.
Yeah. I mean, diabetes is, I don't know where it is ranking in the US as a disease, but it's way up there. You know, type 1 and type 2. And most of us have some sort of blood sugar dysregulation. And so we feel it in all sorts of different ways. Weight gain is a big one, obviously, or difficulty losing weight, lethargy, tiredness during the day, sleep issues is huge. Yeah, just it affects our everyday function. Probably where people feel it the very most, though, is like they don't feel great, they're not sleeping, they're tired, and they can't lose weight.
So stats, I did some real-time stat polling as you were chatting there. So basically 12% of the U.S. population actually has diabetes. And I think if we, so that's about 40 million people. And then if we look at people who have just dysregulation, high glucose, high blood sugar levels, who are on their way to diabetes, that number skyrockets, right? So you just kind of mentioned what happens when we're not aware of it over time. We eat foods, primarily carbohydrates are one of the biggest things that we look at when we look at insulin and blood sugar. We overeat those processed carbohydrates or just carbs in general, and that causes our blood sugar to go up.
Right. Right. And then we have insulin, which is a hormone, which is essentially takes glucose from eating carbohydrates, especially simple, dense carbohydrates from the bloodstream into the cells where we can use it for a function, right? That's essentially what insulin does.
So insulin is basically a transport. So you can think of it almost as a transport hormone. So it's helping grab the glucose and pull it into the cells.
Right. So I think at this stage, it might be actually important to think about carbohydrates a little bit more because they get managed a bit differently. So let's think of carbohydrates like your cookies, your breads, your pastas, your potatoes, like low fiber. They're mainly grain-based carbohydrates that you're consuming during this season, right? Insulin can only manage about 60 grams of carbohydrates at a time. So if you are, for example, having a coffee and a scone, you're probably already spiking. You have nothing else to moderate that.
Especially if you had a latte or an eggnog latte or a mocha or something sweetened.
Yeah. And then a big sweet thing, your insulin can't manage any more than that. So if you load more on, so insulin's going to spike up even more, right, to care for that blood sugar. And that's where we get into a really dangerous state, right? Insulin's got a half-life of 2 hours. So it's already in your bloodstream. Then you eat more carbohydrates, it spikes up more. Then we get into this unstable situation. And usually what happens after that is we crash, right? We get into a hypoglycemic state, our blood sugar crashes, and then our cortisol spikes way up to try to re-regulate us.
And so this cycle might happen multiple times throughout the day for many people, depending, again, what you're eating and what you're doing. But if you're essentially like living a normal life where you're not super physically active, maybe you have an office job, maybe you're behind a desk and you're eating what we're going to call normal foods, you could have a series of these spikes, these elevation, and then crashes throughout the day.
Absolutely. And it really only takes, like somebody who's even got normal blood sugar, it really only takes a couple of weeks of this sort of really dysregulated pattern to put yourself in a pretty dangerous state. So we really want to try to avoid this. There's another compounded layer, which I think is important to address, which is your adrenal glands, right? Your adrenal glands produce cortisol. A lot of us have adrenal fatigue, right? Because we're living a pretty high grind, high stress life. So our adrenals, which are producing cortisol to manage this spike in blood sugar, are also becoming really dysregulated. So it has a big effect on our sleep patterns. This is probably when I first learned about this, and all kudos go to Dr. Rebecca Hoppins at Sage Integrated, because she took one look at me, put me on adrenals first, right, to try to downregulate my adrenals, which were spiking all over the place because was working crazy, raising young kids at that stage, just doing way too much, doing. So adrenals were really, they were tanked. So they weren't able to moderate this whole thing going on. My diet wasn't bad. My adrenals were dysfunctional. But compound that with I'm going to have a bagel or a sandwich or a bowl of cereal or something like that. Like, that's just going to wreck me, right? A bowl of oatmeal. If I eat a bowl of oatmeal for breakfast without anything else in it besides, say, a little milk or whatever, I'll be asleep within 2 hours.
You'll feel it right away.
I am crashing big time, right? It's terrible.
It's really easy to get into this cycle. The cycle can kind of get out of control, but then you span this out over sometimes years and years of our life. And this is where we have weight gain that happens. This all feeds into that 5, 10, 15, 20 pounds plus that can accumulate over time. This cycle can add 20 pounds to your frame in a year.
Yeah, and you're not sleeping at night anymore, right? Because your adrenals are tanked, your blood sugar is dysregulated. Maybe you're falling asleep fine, but then you're waking up in the middle of the night and your heart's racing, you're sweaty, you're hot, you're dysregulated. And that's because your cortisol has not been able to maintain your blood sugar. And then your adrenals have just pumped adrenaline into your body to wake you up, because you're this is like life or death crisis all of a sudden. Your blood sugar's crashed because you're so dysregulated. And then your sleep is just messed up.
And that feeds into everything else, makes everything worse.
Dun, 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 dun.
Yeah, so this is
dark.
It's dark.
Spiral.
Yeah,
it's
very.
It was happening to me. It's happening to most of us.
And you throw alcohol in the mix, and that again feeds this whole cycle. It adds a whole other element of dysfunction to the cycle. Yeah. Unfortunately.
Yeah, and it's a simple cycle when you're aware of it, and there's really simple ways to change that path, and that's what we want to talk about a little bit today. Is really what to do about it.
Yeah. So if you're looking in the mirror or you're listening to this and you're thinking, yeah, okay, I probably have some of this going on. For sure, I have some of this going on. So what would be the symptoms? You have excess body weight, poor sleep, brain fog, low energy. You just look at your diet and your activity levels and you're like, yeah, probably getting some insulin, blood sugar issues. This is all making sense to me. Then, okay, so you're in the right place. Now we're going to talk about, let's get into maybe some specific practical application tactics you can use to manage this season. And then we'll talk a little bit more about some long-term stuff that you should be looking at and thinking about that can really help as well.
Yeah. So again, it's actually relatively simple. If you're going into it without a disease factor, you have normal insulin production, then the order of foods becomes extremely important. So we're talking about the main macros, so fat, protein, and carbohydrates. If you're going to have a carbohydrate, you have to have fat and protein first. Do not eat a biscuit and a cup of coffee like I did yesterday and not expect to have to nap by 3. You have to have fat, protein, carbohydrate.
Generally in that order. The order matters there.
The order matters. So eating the carbohydrate and then the fat and protein, it does not do the same thing. Order really matters. The other thing too is the type of carbohydrate and then the fiber, which is is the same as type of carbohydrate. So Christmas is hard because it's the cookie baked good season, right? Which is all that dense carbohydrate, which just converts really fast to glucose, right? Whereas if we're looking at a sweet potato or a fruit or a veg type of base carbohydrate, that has a lot more fiber in it and it converts much slower. So the body can really manage that a lot easier than it can manage a baked potato with butter.
It goes back to the amount of processing in the natural state, and so especially when you have refined carbohydrates, processed carbohydrates, the more processed they are, the easier it is for your body just to immediately break them down. And then the higher the responding blood sugar spike is going to be, and then the insulin response. And the other thing that happens again with this whole cycle is that you start to become resistant to insulin. And so your body has to release more and more insulin over time to produce the same result. And that, of course, is what leads into the diabetes, and that is the insulin sensitivity, right?
Yeah.
So this carbohydrate type matters, but then to your point, when you're eating food and you're thinking about food, whether that's just a normal day or you're going to a holiday party this week. And so in that case, if you're going to go to a holiday party and there's going to be food and drinks and all that kind of stuff, beeline for the charcuterie board. Go get that cheese, go get those meats, start there, and then work backwards into some of the other carbohydrates.
It's a simple hack, but it works. Eating the cheese and the salami before you have the champagne, right? Skip the cracker maybe, and then like Dr. Hoppins always says, whenever we went out for like Mexican food or anything like this, she's always like, do the guacamole. Don't eat the chips and salsa. Eat the chips and guacamole, right? Because the guacamole is going to really solve a lot of these problems. And so it's really simple when you just put it in your head. And I think too, if you're really feeling like this is talking to you, even starting your day off with a little bit of fat. Like when I was most dysregulated, I started my day off with a quarter of an avocado, really before anything else. Just that fat first really sets your blood sugar up for success during the day. And then just being really careful with the order of things. And don't just drink a glass of wine, right, on its own. It's great. Pair it with cheese. Much tastier.
It doesn't have to be a huge quantity. So you're like, well, what about calories? What about fatty foods? Isn't fat going to make me fat? Well, actually, no. A little bit of cheese before your wine is only going to help. It's not going to hurt. So you don't have to worry. I wouldn't be looking at it from a caloric standpoint there. I'd be looking at it as an insulin management strategy. And it's actually that insulin management is going to matter quite a bit if you do have a body composition or a weight goal. Ultimately, you're going to have to get into that and figure that out at a little bit more deeper level. But I think from a practical standpoint and how to navigate the holidays, just bring in a little bit of nuts, anything that, again, has a little bit of that fatty content prior to the alcohol, prior to the carbs, and then be aware of your carbohydrate consumption. They're not evil, but you just need to be aware.
So like if I'm going to drink wine and I don't have anything else in my house, I will actually have nut butter because it coats that stomach and it will help dampen that effect, the sugar from the wine, rather than chewing up a nut, your body trying to break down the nut. Whereas an avocado will do it right away as well, right?
Olives, another great hack. Olives really good.
Olive tapenade.
Yep, olive tapenade. I mean, olives are great. Like if you have some olives at the house, Costco puts out a mean double jar of Mediterranean olives.
Yeah,
big,
they do.
delicious olives. You could have those at the house, a couple of those before, and some prosciutto before your glass of wine. Snap.
I think, there's so much to this topic. We're playing it down and making it as simple as possible. But the whole cortisol, adrenal fatigue, and blood sugar spectrum is so vitally important to the foundation of your health. I think if you feel like this is a struggle factor for you, then you really should reach out to Sage Integrative Medicine Clinic, who are the absolute experts in managing this. Get yourself tested, get your hormones tested, whatever blood work they feel is appropriate, so that you can really approach this carefully. We're just trying to offer some really simple hacks to survive the holiday and not really blow yourself up.
And you are not an exceptionally lean, physically fit person, I'm going to go ahead and say you have insulin dysregulation to some degree right now, and it's driving inflammation and disease state across your entire system. So this is going to show up in all areas of your life, from brain function, libido, digestion, all of it. All of it is connected. This is actually foundationally a big driver for many people of inflammation and disease. This is one of those things that it's absolutely worthwhile to go into Sage, build a relationship with an integrative practitioner who gets it at a very deep, comprehensive level and can really help you develop a personalized plan to support your particular needs. This is a huge benefit to you to do.
Yeah, it's such a foundational piece. And I think any good integrated healthcare provider is going to start you here.
Absolutely.
Because if this isn't fixed, you really can't go anywhere else.
Which you're going to hear us talk a lot about this year, frankly. We're really, both, Dr. Annie and I have spent in our own ways lots of time on our own health journey, and all roads lead back to the hormonal basis for health as one of the starting things you need to look at. The other piece that I want to throw in here on insulin resistance, there's two other thoughts I would have and share. One is the amount of exercise you're doing, in particular resistance training. So another great way, if you don't have a regular exercise program right now, if you're not lifting weights, man, woman, you're not lifting some kind of weights in some capacity, you really need to consider it, because it is one of the most powerful ways to help regulate insulin in your body. And if it's intimidating, or you're wondering, where do I start? Or it sounds scary, or I don't want to get too big, all these weird concerns, don't worry. It's okay. We have a solution for you. We actually have a program for the ladies out there. Build with Chrissy is where I want to 100% point you, because she is amazing at helping
Amazing.
people get into and build, again, a customized program that will help you start this journey of resistance training, which is one of the most powerful things you can do for your health.
Oh, yeah. Chrissy's amazing. I've been lifting with her now, myself personally, for close to a year now. And for you ladies who think you're going to like bulk up, like as Barry just mentioned, this is such a myth. I wish I could bulk up. You know, I have been lifting hard and heavy, and I think I've gained a couple pounds of muscle, which is actually a lot, but it's hard work to do it. One of the things I love most about, not the most, I really like going into weight training really objectively. And at Head to Toe, we've got an in-body scanner system, which is gold standard in looking at your body composition. It's really nice to go into it knowing exactly where you're at. Here's my fat, here's my lean muscle, water, where is the water? Is it in your cells? Is it out of the cells? Which is a nice indication of whether you're inflamed or not inflamed. And, you know, what's your lean mass? Like, what's your fat percentage? So then you can go into it, and as your body's changing and your scale's going up, you can know why. Is it a good up or a bad up, right? And so it's a nice objective way to go into lifting.
If you think or know that you're going to set a New Year's resolution / intention goal, or that in 2025 you have a body composition goal, you should get some in-body, buy a bundle, buy a package, because that measurement tool will be the thing that helps you know whether it's working or not. And I would start right now. I would get it now and lock in now, bundle deal on it, and start using it in January or whenever you start your intention. But I would 100% get it. You need data point, and the scale is not enough.
The scale really lies. The scale just tells you like, oh my gosh, I've gained 4 pounds, I've lost 4 pounds, I've gained 10, but it doesn't tell you what's really going on. And actually, we've got an in-body promo going on right now. So it's like, we'll put the link in the show notes, but it's like $35 for 2 in-bodies, and you get a consult with Chrissy.
Which is amazing, and it's such a good deal. And so if you think about some of the other scans you can get, like if you get a bod pod, that's going to be $60 to $80, and that you have to get dunked in a tank and wear your swimsuit, and they have to dunk you over and over again. You have to hold your breath. It's basically like torture. And the other thing you get is like a DEXA scan.
Yeah.
And DEXA scans, there's a lot of controversy with DEXA. DEXA is going to cost you $100, $120, $150 a scan. Also pain in the ass to get scheduled. There's not a lot of places that do it. So the in-body is the way to go, for sure, from a convenience standpoint. And to get 2, so that'd be like whenever again, you don't have to use it right. You could start it in January, get it now, start in January. But I mean, I would say do it now, so you have your base in December, and then consult with Chrissy to help get a plan and a thought together, and then start your plan of thought, and then you can do a follow-up, and then from there, if you want more, you can get more. But that's a great, great way to get started.
Yeah. And going back to glucose, as you said earlier, your muscles are gigantic glucose sponges.
They are.
I love that. So if you feel like maybe you do have a blood sugar dysregulation, which I dare to say you probably do, then this weight training is just such a key pivotal factor to helping recover from that.
Yeah, because as you use your muscles during the week, that pulls glucose in. So glucose is fuel for your muscles. So when you lift weights, when you actively exercise with resistance training, and that could be starting with you're going to start with light weights. It's good. Don't be scared. When you start there, that will pull so much glucose. It will help put you on the path to insulin. Again, it helps your body become more sensitive to insulin, so your body produces less insulin, pulls the glucose out of your system, right? So it doesn't store it as body fat, has a whole host of other benefits, but it's a really powerful way to get started.
Yeah, agreed. Okay, so the simple rules are fat and protein before your carbohydrates. Start your day off with a little bit of fat. You know, that can mean many different things. You know, it could be nut butters, it could be avocado, but really watching those combinations as you're cruising through the holidays. I guess the one other thing, which is really super simple, but make sure to stay hydrated, you know, and remember that the key to hydration is actually putting a little bit of salt in your water, which makes your cells uptake that hydration more effectively. And so you can use an electrolyte. I love LMNT. Huge plug for that. It's really been helpful for my hydration. But if you just twist a little bit of pink Himalayan salt in your water, add some lemon or cucumber, and then it becomes a very absorbable drink rather than just straight water, which is also great, but not as great. So stay hydrated as well during the holidays, and you'll feel way better.
Yeah, 100% the electrolytes. Yeah, if you just chug a bunch of water, that's good, but add electrolytes to make it even better. I'm going to throw one bonus thing out there for you, just because I have to, because I'm obsessed with it right now. And that is, you can look at also stuff like GLP-1. So we haven't talked a lot about medications or peptides or pharmaceuticals that can help you with blood sugar regulation. And again, I would highly recommend go see Sage. They have a phenomenal program and incredible results with putting people on GLP-1s like tirzepatide or semaglutide. Highly would recommend tirzepatide though. And those you've probably heard of, Wegovy, Zepbound. I'm sure you've heard of these. I can tell you from personal experience, they can be an incredible ally, an incredible tool for helping you manage your blood sugar, as well as some tried and true pharmaceuticals like metformin. So again, I'm not here as your doctor, and neither is Dr. Annie in this particular case to recommend pharmaceuticals or medications. I would say from personal experience, this is definitely something that you should talk with somebody about and look at if you've been interested. It does help a lot with the blood sugar regulation. And again, we'd point you towards Sage.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I know we get a little GLP-1 expressed when we do that food combining, like that fat and protein first. So it helps to suppress that appetite down the road. But yeah, if you're struggling, get the real support you need for sure.
We will, at some point in the future, I share my personal journey with GLP-1s and tirzepatide on another episode, but it's definitely something to consider. And if you've been looking at it, I would recommend look into it more. I would not recommend you just blindly go into it or use one of these sites you find on the internet. I would go into Sage, work with a trusted provider who can really create a personalized plan for you. And I know I say that all the time, but we are all beautiful individual snowflakes.
The other thing I think is really helpful is try to not eat after dinner, even during the holidays. Like, try to at least cut it by 8 at the very latest. And then don't keep snacking and drinking because that'll really throw you off. And if you are snacking and drinking, then have like some kind of protein before bed. Especially if you're asleep, someone who has a hard time with sleep, if cheese is not your thing, have something else. Some kind of protein thing before bed is also really helpful for those of you who can't sleep.
Yeah. So go back. We'll put all this in the show notes. It's a simple plan. And I think there's 2 messages. 1, you can deploy some of these simple strategies right now to make a huge difference. And 2, go a little bit deeper with a trusted professional who can really help you dial this in. It is something that will create tremendous, tremendous health benefits and changes for you in this upcoming year. So if you have health goals, if you have body composition goals, these roads are going to lead you back to insulin control and to understanding how to dial your blood sugar in and how to get your hormones in check. And we're here to help. So if you have questions, reach out to us. Again, we can point you in the direction of our providers. And if you want to get some information on InBody, or you want to get some information on how to create a great program, like a lifting program, a resistance training program, we have Chrissy for you, and we have a whole build program. So come into the clinic or give us a call, and we'll have to get you more information on that. Links in the show note. Dr. Annie, thanks for being here.
Thank you.
We'll catch you on the next episode, and have a happy holiday.